My name's Alan Lane. I'm the Artistic Director of Slung Low. And Slung Low is a theatre company that makes work for non-theatre spaces. And alongside that we also run the Holbeck Underground Ballroom, which is this space, which is a rehearsal space that we give over free to makers of progressive work in the region. 10 years, well, increasingly, yeah, 12 now. But the first 6 years, it's fair to say, were rubbish. We were rubbish. So on our website there's no record of anything that we haven't done in the last 4 years, because we got good 4 years ago. So now we like to just talk about the 4 years that we were good. We started out, I think, like an awful lot of post-university theatre companies in this country, just wanting to make theatre and to be able to do that in direct contrast to going and getting a proper job. And that causes you to make a number of mistakes, or certainly forced me to make a number of mistakes. The first of which was that if you make a brand new musical with a cast of 9 and a band of 9 and take it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, that will make you money. Which is, when you're 19, something that you genuinely think is a truthful statement. And I'm 33 and I'm still paying off the credit cards. And beyond losing money, the big mistake there is just I have no idea why I made it. It doesn't. If I look at it now, I go, it doesn't speak to anything that I'm interested in. It doesn't speak to an experience I want to make for the public. I don't believe art should be trying to do that. It's just wrong, and it's because we spent the first 5 years just trying to find ways of doing it. So, oh God, do you want to play? I'll do a play. What do you want the play to be about? Vermeer, yeah, brilliant. I love Vermeer. What the hell is Vermeer? And so it took a number of years to start to make things that were provoked by something we wanted to do, as opposed to there is an opportunity for someone to. Which is why you find a lot of directors, young directors in this country, doing youth theatre shows, because that's what you're meant to do. They have no interest in making youth theatre work. The kids aren't interested in working with them, but that's the thing that's paying. And then after about 5 years, we were still making a show or two a year and trying to find our way. Most of it was truly atrocious. There was a great live art period in which we made shows that neither us nor the audience understood. And we just sort of look at these things and go, wow! And then I worked for a big regional producing house called the West Yorkshire Playhouse, which is around the corner, which is a brilliant theatre full of very good people. And I had no idea that there were people who were paid full-time to make theatre, and that were well resourced. And I was the assistant director there for a year, and it opened my eyes that theatre wasn't just made in scrappy little corners of studios at universities. But the realisation that someone like me and my company would not be allowed on that stage, despite the fact by now we were starting to think about better ideas, caused us to start making work in warehouses and other non-theatre spaces, and that was provoked out of no one was going to. I had a company at one point of 33. The nearest university studio would fit maybe 5 of those people on stage, so the show would have to be built in chapters, and that was very dull. So we took over a space next to Starbucks that was an abandoned, not an abandoned, they hadn't made it into a Pizza Express yet. And this space was huge, it was like a hangar, and no one really cared what we did, and it didn't really have very good power, and everything had to be lit from candles and torches and stuff. But the sense of scale was huge, and that was really exciting. And that was, I think, the first moment, provoked in a way by not being allowed to play with the toys, and going, oh, okay, well, there's some stuff over here that no one's paying any attention to. And since then, a lot of our work has been in the cracks. So we were in 5 railway arches on the very edge of a city that was hugely developed and really impressive, which is everything stage left, and gorgeous double glazing, it's lovely, and barristers and graphic designers, and to stage right is a hole. If they knocked down every other house, because they were going to clear, but they got halfway through and thought, oh well, we won't finish. The people still live next to knocked down houses, and in the gap between, we can live quite happily in 5 railway arches. So that idea of going where no one's paying attention, and that often for us it's scale, but those opportunities of space, an awful lot of time, because the space is not expensive, was for us the turning point. So once we worked out what we wanted to do, what we wanted to say, the type of stories we wanted to tell, and I think the realisation that we wanted to tell stories, that coupled with, oh look, there's all this opportunity and resource here that no one's paying any attention to. It's not very nice, it's not very clean, you have to knock the rats on the head sometimes, but we could make it ours. Those two things, I think, have been most vital for us stopping being rubbish. Because nobody else asked in that instance, and I think that that's true for the company's relationship with the region, is where it has worked in this region, which is West Yorkshire, it's because at that time, it's not true now, but at that time no one else was doing it. People were doing it in Manchester. By no means, I don't think I've even reinvented the wheel. I think I just, oh look, we've all got wheels. But at the time, no one was. We did a show in a car park, and this was the profoundly original. Oh my God, a car park! Circuses have been pitching their tents in car parks for decades, but people who weren't circuses haven't done that for a long time. And I think that's been also the pattern of this company. A lot of the work that is talked about in the press as genuinely innovative are just remodelings of the mystery plays. I know this because I came up with the idea, and they're remodelings of the mystery plays, and the journalists can keep writing ideas. No one's ever done this before. They've done it since it's the oldest type of theatre in this country, but it's got an iPod in it or something. So I think we've tried very hard to be ahead of the curve. That's becoming less and less vital for us now, or partly because the aim to be innovative for innovative sake's not something I'm just getting that little bit older, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but it's a trick. And also, we now operate much more beyond the region than we do in the region. We can't get laid in Leeds. We're Liverpool lovers, and I love Liverpool. London, we're doing the Christmas show. We just did a show in Singapore. Hopefully we'll go up into the northeast. It's just the makeup. It's not because this region is any stupider or any cleverer than any other region. It's just the makeup of the region is such that large-scale experimental pieces outside of the theatre, which is more or less what we make now, and that's a new thing for us, just don't have a natural home here in Leeds. That's fine. Leeds does other things very, very well. And so the strive to be innovative, new, rather than very, very good, is different. Well, the very next thing we're doing is a show in a swimming pool about diving off a 10-metre big board, which is written by the idea was actually hers, a very, very good playwright called Emma Adams, which is about courage, where the audience will watch the performance in the swimming pool, and eventually someone's going to have to jump off that big board, which is pretty terrifying. And then we're doing, then the next full Slung Low show we're doing is at Christmas. We're doing the kids show at the Barbican, which is called 59 Minutes to Save Christmas, which I like a great deal because the title does all the work for you. We know what that's about. Which is the first time we're making work for little ones, 7-year-olds, and the 7-year-olds are going to put headphones on. So it's a very intensive experience. So it should be very exciting. Big Board is very unique for us because we were approached by a playwright and another theatre company to say we would like to do this idea, but we don't know how to work in a swimming pool, and you guys can make work in could you take on the producing and the directing and so. But a normal Slung Low idea starts either. We have ideas. We have a series of things that we're really interested in. We're very interested in angels at the minute. We're doing a lot of research in angels, doing a lot of research in magic, and so those are sort of content ideas that are always bubbling along. And then there is the form ideas. We love this idea of public signs. So signs that look like for sale signs that are on lampposts that tell stories about communities, and that those stories can be factual or fictional, but we should always pretend that they're all factual, because they're much more exciting when we do that. And those two things are at the minute bubbling around a lot, as are lots of thoughts about First World War. So whenever we got the chance, if you ran a building in this country, I'd be like, hey, you've got a First World War show idea. So on the one hand, we're actively selling stuff, and that process can take 3 weeks if I get lucky and say first thing and I'm on, or we've had stuff that's been bubbling for 3 years. But mostly how we get our jobs, and we have to work we're incapable of doing anything on our own because we have no money, is people go, we have a very big traditional Christmas show here, we'd like something really unusual and experimental for kids here. What's your thoughts? And at that point we'd go away and within 2 or 3 weeks come up with a new idea. Or what we get a lot of is, we're a very successful theatre but people don't think we're risky. Could you do something risky? Or there is a pot of money from the council to regenerate this area. It's rough as dogs. Do you fancy it? What would you? And at that point, that provokes the thinking. So recently, a pyrotechnician has made some amazing fire sculptures. They're phenomenal. And said, "These are the sculptures. This is how much money I've got. Make me a show." Or this space needs animating. This is how much time we've got. Make me a show. And those things take 2 or 3 weeks, and they buy them or they don't buy them. It takes about 2 or 3 weeks to... Well, that's a big question. What we've tried here is that the average wage in this country is it's £500 a week. That's average, and I would like it, for as long as I'm in control of such things, for everyone in this company to be paid that, and no more than that, and no less than that. So that's what me and Laura are on. It's a very, very, very new thing for the company for me to be paid. Up until 3 months ago, I was paid only if I was in the rehearsal room. And when the show went up, if I wanted to operate the show, I would be paid, and if not, then I wasn't in the room. And after a while, it became ridiculous because I was working for other people to subsidise working here, and that didn't quite work. So now me and Laura are full-time, we're paid every single week of the year. But everyone who joins us is paid that fee of £500 a week. That is a very difficult principle to hold on to, because not everyone's equal. Some people have kids, some people have a mortgage, some people are incredibly rich to start with, some people are incredibly poor to start with. And therefore sometimes there is some wiggle room there, and there's some things we can do that still allow us to hold on to the principle. What we recharge other people is a very different question. And because we are, the company has made a commitment to paying me and Laura when we work on other things, that's the quickest way for this company to make money. So obviously the hub runs at a deficit. But when we go and work for this theatre over here, we've already been paid, so any money we recharge then allows this place to grow, and grow, I mean, not leak, and be in some senses warm some of the time. So that, and that's a set of balances that I can understand and I can get behind, and therefore my life isn't governed by money. But I've started to care about it in a way that I didn't before, because every time I go and do that and charge them that, then this place can have this, and this community can do that, and I start to understand that, and that's something that Laura brought in with her, and a sort of understanding of, no, stop saying you'll do that, which is very useful. Laura comes from a completely different background to the company. She trained as a commercial producer and ran commercial venues, and then worked for the Lowry, which is a big monolith building in Salford. And she was one of the programmers and producers on Liverpool 08, which is a European capital of culture, with outdoor work and children as her portfolio. And we did a show, our first good show was called Small Worlds, which was an installation for young people, which is when we started to get into the box shows, which was our first period of work. And she bought that and loved it, and then when obviously Liverpool 08 was just a year's programme of culture, I said, if you're ever looking to go freelance, please come and work with us. We could really do with someone to smack us all around the back of the head. And then she went to Sadler's Wells, and she went from Sadler's Wells to here, which I think is a step up. But there are days when you have to smash the ice off the window to open it that she doesn't feel like that. But she's exceptionally good, and the really useful thing is, we don't come from the same world. There are things I say where she goes, what on earth are you talking about? There's no logic to that, and there is no logic to that. And that's a very good friction to have. It's a very complicated company in that sense, in that for a long period of time, at the very big, so just take the last 5 years, in the first third of that we were a large-scale collective. So we would put the budgets up on the wall on a projector, everyone would see what everyone was getting paid and everything else, and we transitioned out of that quite gently, actually, by virtue of everyone going, I don't want to do this anymore. I think it's very easy to make these changes when you are growing in success, and the amount of work we were getting was always increasing, so that allowed us to move into being more of a theatre company. And then this last change, for the middle section of this last change, is where we're now a group of associated artists and a group of people run the company. And those people are me and Laura and Pete, who's the associate producer who helps Laura out. We generate an obscenely large amount of paperwork now, and he does a lot of that, which is very good. And we have Matt, who's Matt, who's a sound designer and runs the hub, and he's been with us for this year. And then beyond that, there are a group of artists who have worked with us for the whole time, and at every point we were something else, they were a part of that. So Heather, who's a composer in Sheffield, Lucy, who's a South African choreographer, Scotty, who's a novelist who now lives in America, which makes meetings quite difficult, and And beyond that core, there is then a group of more loosely affiliated artists who are actors and designers who would all, I suppose, on their CVs in some way say, no, I'm a member of Slung Low, but they don't have to come in here from week to week. And that balance seems to be working at the minute. That if you are Heather, you naturally expect every month to get an update saying, okay, new gigs are this, these are how much we can pay you, you cool? And everyone goes, yeah, great. And I think as long as that keeps being transparent, we keep a very loosely affiliated company, because the amount of time that it costs in time and money to bring everyone together to discuss, do we approve the expenditure of the kitchen cleaning? Nobody wanted to do that. It's the only time I've ever known a collector go, please stop. Just take over and do it, and then pay us money to write music or write books or write. So I think we've just literally come out the back of this now. I think we've got there with it, but we'll see. But that's the gang. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, they were tough. Alongside the Slung Low stuff for those first 6 years, I was doing other things, and those other things were really important. I was working in prisons and working in communities and that just had no concept of culture, or the cultural provision, and that's for an experimental and sometimes as well avant-garde theatre company. You can still see that that's a background in a number of us where you go, hang on, what? Oh, that makes sense. There's a reason why we like doing shows on trains and in squares and in places that people don't expect to see art, and that's that double audience. There are people who pay for a ticket, put off their headphones and give up 2 hours, and then there's people who walk home or on their way to get a glass of wine and go, oh, there's an angel. That's interesting. That those two audiences are, I think, central to what we do, and that comes from the 6 years in the dark. It's a really contentious question. So the company has always been project funded, or it spent a long time not being funded, and then it got project funded, and then in the last 6 months it became part of a portfolio of regularly funded organisations from the Arts Council. When it did that, they needed us to change. So 24 months ago, pre-Laura, in the dark ages, it was me, a mobile phone, and we kept books by an old-fashioned ledger. I would write everything in by pencil, because if we went a penny over, that was my penny. And my wife had lost 2 honeymoon funds, 2 mistakes of an administrative nature, so it wasn't going to happen again. Since then, which is not that long ago, we have, partly from taking over the responsibility of this place, which was asbestos-filled death trap when we moved in, and the need for insurance, because it was only a little while ago 3,000 people saw us set fire to the roof of a building that apparently needs to be insured. Vans and all that sort of gumph, we've moved. So now what we are is, officially, we are a limited company. I am the chair. I make everybody call me the chairman in meetings, it's appalling. And everybody else is freelance. So from a tax and official point of view, that's where we are. We have an advisory board of 5 women who are exceptionally talented and experienced, and they are, if there was a way of me saying a committee of elders that didn't offend them, I would say a committee of elders, but they're all so wonderful. And what they do is we sit down with them every 6 months, we tell them what they're doing, and they tell us what they think. And I listen. And I don't argue with them, and I don't try and convince them of anything. That's how we're made up. It is as loose an administrative system as you can possibly devise. And partly because we're not interested in, we've made a commitment to being here to 2015, when I will be 36, and at 36 I don't want to be smashing the ice off the door anymore, I've got to be honest. It breaks you in the winter here, physically. So our commitment is to do this as well as we can up until that point, whereas the tendency is to force one into building empires and kingdoms. So an awful lot of pressure, an unbelievable amount of pressure too. But what happens if you want to go and do something else, Alan? How can we ensure that Slung Low keeps going? You go, well, Slung Low doesn't keep going. There's someone else will come along and do something else, and that's good. That scares the bejesus out of an awful lot of people, and I suppose I understand why they're investing money and they want to see that investment be protected. I'd argue that what they're doing is they're investing money in experiences for audiences now, and in the medium term. I get slightly softer about that because some of the shows we're now devising are so big and so they're huge pieces of public performance art that they take 3 years to plan, and so therefore there's got to be a sense of give and take in that principle in a way that with the financial one I feel much more firmly about it. The board thing is difficult because everyone would like me to have a board. No one, strangely, and really they would like me. They were like, we're not giving you a cheque till you get a board. And it turns out, unfortunately, it's not written in any of our funding agreements that I have to have a board. So, temporarily I will. But much more importantly than that, and sort of less childishly than that, no one's ever argued me as to why I need a board. The sense of being responsible for things is very real here. There is no backup, there is no safety valve, there is our own competencies, or in this instance Laura's competencies in ensuring that the money is where we need it to be and everything else. But if it goes wrong, then it will be us. And if the show goes wrong, it will be us. And that feels to me much more real than the idea of handing over that responsibility to somebody else. I think and the other thing is that it's taken 12 years, it's taken 2 honeymoon funds, and it's taken I don't know how many times of, oh right, so sorry guys, we're not getting paid. Well, because this guy, he charges double what we thought. And everybody who's involved in this company, even the people who aren't involved in the company anymore, for good and bad reasons, own it. If someone wants to buy me out, I'm happy to negotiate. But nobody does want to buy me out. They would like us to hand on our collectively owned thing and give it to a group of our betters. The more militant version of me is that I've seen a number of really good arts organisations go to the wall with boards, and that didn't stop them, and I've seen really good arts organisations turn into dull, money-munching blurs with boards. And I'm sure that there are people who operated as cowboys as we do, who've exactly the same thing. I don't think there's necessarily the idea that a greater God will stop me messing it up. It won't. Waking up every single morning and sprinting until I go to bed every night will stop me messing it up. And whilst I work only for me and the responsibility for all the people who work in this is mine, I will sprint every moment. If I have some people and go, hey guys, I don't like how much money I'm being paid, because I don't like how much money I'm being paid, but I understand if I get paid anymore I'm not going to be able to do this project. If I have a boss, I'm going to want a pay rise. That was a very long answer to a very simple question. Well, we have Matt. So Matt is a member of the company, and he is a sound engineer by trade. He's now a sound designer, and he devised and designed our headphone system and does a lot of that technical stuff. We are incredibly practical. So Laura's the only producer who used to work at Sadler as well as I know, who once made 500 pieces of eggy bread for the audience. I don't know whether you have that in Australia, but it's where you take bread and you dip it in egg and then you fry it. 500 pieces is a lot. And she cleans the headphones with anti-back wipes. And I drive the van. We have a lovely Airstream caravan, which is part of one of our shows. I'm the only one who has the right licence to drive it, so the director drives the caravan to every single gig, no matter how small it is. And that's partly because it costs £2,000 to train anyone to drive the caravan, and that's not money I'm willing to spend, or spend twice. That is how practical we are. We're putting fireplaces in here. We're doing it by going, well, how hard can it be? I'm just going to knock a hole in the ceiling and stick a bit of metal up there, it'll be fine. And that's that practical attitude is what we've got. The times we don't do that is when we fly anything and when we blow anything up. We bring in those guys, and we often bring in electrics because most of our stuff is domestic. We call it Wilkinson's Designing. There's a shop called Wilkinson's, it's really cheap. You go and buy 500, a bubble machine is boring, 500 bubble machines is exciting. So if they only cost £2, you can buy 500 of them. But occasionally we get into electrics and generators scare us, so we always bring someone in for that. But otherwise we hump and thump. Well, Lucy's a choreographer, but she's also a movement director. So whenever we've had large groups of people, that's who does it. We often hire in other associate directors of different types. So we have an improvising actor who works with me a lot to create shows. We have some young directors who come in who are very good at actually keeping my energy going. Is what their job is a lot of the time, is to help me. And so there is always people that we invite in for each show. So the core company, that is maybe 5 or 6, the composer, sound artist, choreographer, producer, director, writer, will then be joined by another 5 or 6 people. And those group aren't the same for every show, but you'll often see familiar faces, so we're building a family network out of that as well. And then practically how we look after them is that's what we pride ourselves on. We have 252 people, they all get a pizza. That's 252 people's pizzas being delivered. We know how to do that now. A choir of 32, we have enough thermal mugs for them to all have a cup of coffee, and we know how to turn that number of cups of coffee around. Those sorts of practical things is what we take care of. It's a strange thing to take pride in, but it's really shit when you get it wrong, because they all get upset and think you don't love them. Because we're designed that we have to make in partnership, so we have to make with, so theatre has to produce us, or someone has to. It's meant that we're never in the same place, so we do one show a year in London maybe, and then we go up to Liverpool, do that, then we do that with them, and so the brand that people are coming to isn't really Slung Low. It's increasingly in this country, oh, that's one of those really exciting things, like that Doctor Who thing they did. There's this sense of other, there's a sense of going somewhere that isn't a theatre to see theatre, that is obviously led by Punch Drunk, but Dream Think Speak, and there's an awful lot of people now doing this sort of stuff. So one of our big difficulties is in all the marketing copy that's done by other people, it always says, they're like Punch Drunk, and you go, oh, for God's sake, we're not. Oh, please don't say that, that's embarrassing. And we have to write a letter to them going, guys, we're sorry. And so we haven't collected an audience. Recently we've started to, so we made 5 shows in North Yorkshire. North Yorkshire is a big place. It takes a number of hours to drive from one end to the other, so the idea that people would go to each of those shows over a few months I didn't think was very realistic, but people did. They are a small group of people. What I love about them is they always bring friends, and they always love the show, because that sense of ownership. So I think that there are people who, we have supporters now. There are an awful lot more people in this country still that like the idea of us and haven't seen our work. We think, for whatever reason, some of them because they don't like theatres, some of them because they don't like posh people, so whatever it is, people are like, oh yes, Slung Low are good. And you go, have you seen her? Oh no, you haven't. You like the idea of us. Those people are more dangerous to me. Because we are in some sense political, our work isn't, but how we operate, why we're here, is political, and I'm very dangerous of people who like a theatre company because of what they stand for. I'm a middle class white man in his 30s. Do you know what I mean? I'm not a rebel leader. I'm just a guy trying to tell stories. There was a stat that was about people in this country, something like 67% of people think that it's good that there is a high arts profile in this country and it's funded by the public. And 42% of people regularly go to the arts. So there are 20% of people out there who go, yeah, it's good, it's not for me. And I find that strange. Most people are quite capable of understanding really complicated ideas when you don't tell them it's a really complicated idea. And that group of people in the middle are those people, and those are the ones I'd like to come see our stuff. But we think about the audience constantly from the experience, because I don't know whether they can see, because there aren't seats and it hasn't been raked. So I'm not starting from the point of view that everyone can see. And I'm going to have to get them around a very, very difficult obstacle course, different each time. I'm going to have to get them on a train. I'm going to have to get them on a commuter train that's already full of commuters, and they've got headphones on so they can't hear anything. And I've got to find a way for that to be fun and not me shouting at them or getting them on the train. So that thought about the audience is constant. But at the same time, thinking about the audience in a marketing sense, I don't think I do much of. I'm not sure at the minute whether I should or not. But the idea of who will love this? Well, okay, I don't know who will love this. I think that's reductive. I understand why it happens, and there are good reasons, and we have to market in one way or another. But I think it's reductive to go. I think my mum comes and sees stuff, and she thinks it's great. My mum would not go and see an experimental theatre company. Turns out, if her son is in it, she will. And I think most people are like that. I think most people will come because there's a reason to. We're incredibly lucky that most of our audiences are really small. And small though it is, our reputation is such that if it's 20 people a night for a week, it's fine. It's going to sell out. This last year we've actually been putting blocks in to stop basically our friends and funders taking up all the tickets. So we go, no, you have to enter a raffle. A lot of our work is free. If it was up to me, it would be free. All the time. And whenever we are in complete control of that, so whenever we go, guys, if you can find a way of knocking the cost down, you can not charge for tickets. We do that. When we work for other people, So the Christmas show will be paid because they're paying for it, so that's up to them. I understand the logic of it. I have a small problem with the idea that the people who live next to me have already paid for the show that's on at the West Yorkshire Palace at the minute, because they paid their council tax and they paid their tax. They've chipped in. But the tickets are £22 each. The people who live next to me haven't got 44 quid to go to the theatre. But it's irrelevant anyway, because we don't market to Armley, because it's West Leeds and it's a shithole. So we don't put posters up, because that would actually be a waste of marketing money, because everyone knows that because who's it for? It's not for them. So they don't know about it. But it's okay, because if they did know about it, they wouldn't have the money to go anyway. But they've already paid for it. So the people from Harrogate, which is in North Yorkshire, who we do market to, even though, and this is amazing, Harrogate isn't in the council band that pays for that. So we market to them because they can afford the tickets. That's wise. That's the marketing people are doing what they're meant to do, and they're doing it well. And I still think it stinks. And I don't know what the answer is, but the good people of the West Yorkshire Palace have heard me say that a number of times now, until they're bored of it. That's okay, because I don't run the West Yorkshire Palace, but I do run this bit, and when I can, I won't charge for tickets, because they've already paid for it. Yeah, much more than we used to. But we were just bandits. We used to just drive up, do it, and rock off. And occasionally there are moments when we still have that as a tactic of just do it. It's much easier for me to go and apologise. I have a suit that I put on for it than it is. Councils are increasingly, at the minute, excited about what we can do for them, so it's become easier in getting permissions or licenses. It's a really big problem. We've had luck to work with some really progressive councils, partly because we're not asking them for anything. But if they don't waive their fee for that, that will bust up the project. But they'll get the credit for the project because it's the council. We're very lucky in Leeds actually. We are given money by the council, both project money to deliver certain things in certain places, but also they contribute to this place. Very small amount, but incredibly important amount, and that's where our reputation is growing, I think. And there's a backlash. There's the people now who haven't seen our work who go, yeah, I think you're a bit overhyped. And you go, cool, okay. Which one did you see? Oh, I didn't see any of them. Oh, okay. And that's, I think that works. That's not us. That's everybody. We're a weird industry, and because of the subsidy, there is a very unsure footing on how do you know you've won. What's the win? How do we know that? Is it the newspapers? Because there is literally nobody left in this country who thinks that that's true. And up here, you're not going to get any of the newspapers anyway. I mean, I could set fire to you, and I wouldn't get a newspaper up here. Is it our peers? Well, that doesn't. Most of our work is not seen by our peers. Is it how many times we're commissioned? Well, we know that's a bit of an inside game. Anyway, it's very difficult to know exactly what a win is.